In fact, I love being challenged by everyone in the company. That's kind of, for me, that's a successful business when you've got individuals challenging you at every stage.
I'm Robin Johnson, this is Yours for the Making, and I'm joined by Guy Watts from Architectural Plants.
The big problem in our industry is finding young people that want to work in our industry. The key thing is finding the right people that stick at it, because it's so much work, putting the training and money as well, the investment we as a team put into each individual.
This show tells the story of the makers, the people that create things, whether it's in wood or metal, whether they're artists or musicians or chefs. It doesn't matter. I'm going to tell their story.
We started off our life in 1990, and the idea was that we would be driving along. Angus, who's the founder, and a chap called Peter, he was a propagator, and he would see a tree that they liked that had good shape, good form, and they would knock on this guy's door and say, could we come and take some seed or cuttings? And essentially the collection of architectural plants started from there.
I'm Robin Johnson, this is Yours for the Making, and I'm joined by Guy Watts from Architectural Plants. Thanks for coming in, Guy.
Thank you, yeah, it's great.
So, Architectural Plants, what do you do?
So we're a specialist plant nursery, so we do everything from tiny little plants, grasses and stuff, all the way up to huge trees, maybe even a tree that just fits in one lorry, so it can be the whole thing really. And we do garden design too and planting, so it's a kind of nursery that offers the whole service if customers want it.
And you're based over in Pulborough, in West Sussex, was that Surrey?
West Sussex, yeah, we're right on the border actually, yeah. So we kind of work all over the country, but that's where we're based, yeah.
And it's a huge site as well.
Yeah, we're 32 acres, and it's essentially just a flat field that we've turned into a nursery, and we're operating on about half of that at the moment.
Really?
So it's a huge amount of space to grow, and we also have our own lake there, and that allows us to feed the plants. So it's quite a big site to look after.
And with nurseries and places like yourselves, do you propagate all of the trees and the plants from seed, or are you buying stuff in from other places and then letting it grow? Like, how does it work? 'Cause that's always really interested me.
Yeah, it's true, yeah. So there's lots of nurseries that are just import, so they'll get plants from other nurseries, whether that's in Europe or the UK. But we're really fascinated by the whole growing side, really, making it ourselves. So although we do import, probably about 60-70% of our plants now are ones we grow on site.
Really?
Yeah, so we started off our life in 1990, and the idea was that we would be driving along. Angus, who's the founder, and a chap called Peter, he was a propagator, and he would see a tree that they liked that had good shape, good form, and they would knock on this guy's door and say, could we come and take some seed or cuttings? And essentially the collection of architectural plants started from there.
Really?
So it was quite, it was sort of founded on that kind of idea that you could you see something you love and then make it. So we do the same thing now, but we also have our own garden at the nursery. So we use that to grow plants that we can then take cuttings and seed from.
Wow, that's very cool. The idea that you can just drive down the road and go, I like that tree. Let's take a little branch of that, and then we can sell 50 of them in 100 years' time. But it's a long game, though, isn't it?
It's a long game, but also the reason you're doing that is because with plants, obviously, it's about hardiness. So there might be a particular variety of plant that actually doesn't get through a particular winter. So if you see it in someone's garden, it's probably been there for 50, 60, 70 years, it's got a hardy rating to it. So it's a bit about the look, it's a bit about the aesthetics, but it's also around, is this plant going to be tough? So that's a really clever place to start, because you're getting seed and cuttings from a plant that's essentially quite a tough one to go with. So that's a really important part of that. It's not just about the look, it's about its hardiness, basically.
Now, that's a really key factor for anyone growing plants in the UK. I mean, we're blessed in the southeast, probably of the most temperate climate in the country. But even so, I think back to when we were, I say very loosely, designing our garden, and we were looking through booklets or online at nurseries online and buying different plants that were getting delivered, and see a picture of something that's that big, and then when it arrives, it's like a pot that's about the same size as my teacup. And I would say of the plants that we planted a couple of years ago when we first started on the garden, not even half of them are still there.
Yeah. Our main kind of whole approach really is we're container growing, which means that our plants start in plastic pots and then they go up in bigger sizes. So that's called container growing. Some nurseries, they're field grown. So you would use maybe Holland, some parts of England, they're field grown, they're dug up, called transplanting, and then they're put into pots. The reason that's important is because for us, like they're sort of used to this life in a pot, and that moment when they go in a garden, it's really important that sort of transition's really well managed. Often it's people don't water them enough, or the complete other extreme and they overwater. So we use irrigation systems in gardens to help people to establish plants in a sort of more controlled way.
I mean, our mutual friend Robin, I know that watering is the bane of his life in the summer, isn't it? His garden's quite special, and I know that's down to a lot of it is down to you guys supplying some of the most incredible trees and plants that, as a spectacle, that garden is quite something else. But I also know that in the summers when he buys plants and stuff, he's got like irrigation tubes that go down. It's almost like filling up a tank of petrol for about
it's a
5 minutes.
HQ Park's an amazing place to visit, actually, if any of the listeners haven't been
HQ Park, yeah, exactly.
HQ Park is a cool place, and most of it is plants from architectural plants, so it's cool, but you've got a dedicated grower there. You know, Robin is amazing with plants, so he's really knows what to do. But he's probably doing that for the first 18 months to 2 years of life, and then the plant should then find its way. You know, the roots start to go in the ground, and they'll be more established. So it's that beginning stage, which is like the sort of weaning them out of a pot, basically, which is really important.
So talking about beginning stages, how did you get started?
So I've been gardening since the age of 8 with my parents.
Wow.
Yeah. My mum and dad had a place down in Rye in the nature reserve down there, and it's insanely windy, really difficult place to have a garden.
It's very barren, actually. There's not many plants down there apart from a bit of sea cane.
Yeah, it's mad. It's one of the flattest parts of Europe from my research from before. So it's a really difficult place. So yeah, really windy, lots of salt spray.
I've got another fact about it, actually. The bit around Dungeness, the sort of the Pebble Beach from, I think, Winchelsea to Dungeness is England's only desert, and I think the biggest desert in Europe or something as well. Yeah,
that might have been. That's a good fact to know. So yeah, and it makes sense. So it means in that environment, like, we learn really early on about what works and what doesn't. You've got that transition again of like really looking after plants. There's trees down in my mum and dad's garden that I grew from seed. So Pinus Pioneer is a pine tree. You take the cone off it, you put it in your airing cupboard, and it pops, and all the seeds come out with the warmth. And then you sow the seeds in a tray, and I've now got these trees that are towering above the garden that I grew from I must have been around 12, 14, something like that. So it's quite cool seeing that. For me, is the most exciting thing about horticulture. It's so tangible. And if you get it right and plants survive, you can see them, develop over time. It's just a wicked thing.
And then where did you go from there?
So I learned to garden down there and designed and helped build the garden. And I got up to sort of teenage years, and then we went actually to Architectural Plants, which was based in Nuthurst at the time, near Horsham. And my mum and dad loved shopping there, so I went in, and they introduced me to Angus, who was the founder. And I just sort of instantly fell in love with this place. If you haven't been before, it's not your everyday garden centre or nursery. It's all about the look and the feel. It's the aesthetics. It's beautifully designed. Angus and actually the carpenter Phil, who still works with us, built these beautiful sort of Western Australian inspired buildings. So it was more than a place to buy plants, basically. And I just really liked Angus. I realised from an early age that he was very inspirational, but also he was willing to let you do anything really in terms of from a work point of view. So it wasn't sort of this strict 9 to 5. And I worked there in my summer holidays. You're allowed to jump on the forks. You're potting on bamboo. It's just a cool place to work, basically. I did that all the way through to past my university years, and it was just my summers were spent, in a place I loved. It was amazing.
And did you study horticulture at university or anything like that?
No, yeah, I studied accounting and finance.
Oh, really? Oh, well, put you in good stead, though, I suppose.
It's good for the business point of view, but I kind of really, and I still use that every day. It's amazing, really good skills. But my time actually there in the entrepreneurial setting with Angus, at the end of the day, I'd sit and talk to him about things I'd noticed. I was fascinated about pricing. I was fascinated about the way they sold plants. It was really good knowledge that they were sharing with customers. Whereas again, and my experience going to garden centres was no one really knows about plants, and in fact, they sell lots of stuff other than plants. And so it was. I just learned some really good lessons around that. We had really interesting customers as well. So yeah, it was a good experience. I did a bit of time with Peter, the chap I mentioned earlier, who was the propagator that started at Architectural Plants, and I started learning how to make plants. And he was the one that taught me about Pinus Pioneer. I also did lots of stuff with ferns. So the idea that you can just make something from it, as I said, from a seed or cutting, it was just kind of blew my mind at that age.
There's I've got a friend, you probably know her, Helen Tate. They've got the Tates.
Yeah, fantastic.
I remember her dad, she was telling me that her dad was kind of the man that saved the Sheffield Park, Montezuma.
Yeah, Pinus Montezuma.
Montezuma, Sheffield Park.
Brilliant tree.
He was the guy that had kind of almost established that in the UK from I think one cutting from a tree in Sheffield Park. Yeah. Now they're kind of not endangered anymore.
Yeah. It's a brilliant nursery lime cross. They're great girls. We know them really well, but. Yeah, they're conifer specialists. So same thing, but again, they're like the foundations of that business were very similar to ours. It's about making, and it's about being obsessed about plants and, taking certain varieties. Ours is definitely very much more based around a collection that's about aesthetics. So architectural plants means shape and form. So it's something that, that stands out, that either holds its shape, looks architectural in a garden, or it's something that you sort of force that upon it by clipping it or shaping it. So going back to Ishiku Park, that is a proper architectural plant garden. It's just he's kind of taken it to the nth degree, and everything's shaped and thought about. It's really a thoughtful garden.
Well, it's shaped now because Robin's putting on Clip Fest every year.
That's right.
For Cliptomaniacs.
That's it. Well done. Nice.
And people, what is the name of someone that's sort of a topiary clipper? Is it
Cliptography?
A cliptographer. He puts on a festival where people go and it's a great idea. I mean, he gets his garden shaped and trimmed pretty much for free. I mean, there's a bit of a cost to put the festival on, no doubt, but it's great.
It's brilliant though, because it also, like a lot of we call it creative maintenance, and it's our service that we've got lots of techniques that we've come up with as a company, and it's a really nice thing for our team to be able to go to an event like that and show off their skills. Yeah. And actually there's a lot of people that these sort of hidden artists, they're sculptors really, some of the guys, Paul and Sam particularly, and James, these guys have been doing it for now like nearly 10 years, and they take it very, very seriously. We had a very prestigious project, which we're not allowed to say where it was, but it's a prestigious garden. And it was some existing yew topiary, and the guys spent about 3 weeks in there turning them into a big piece of art, essentially. So creative maintenance and Robin's event, Clipfest, it's a real sort of exciting time for the industry because it's not happened before. Yeah. So it's great.
It does feel like that. It feels like we're just at the bottom of a wave that's about to crest and stuff. And there's so much going on in that industry. I mean, I've recently, I say in the last maybe 3 or 4 years, been involved on a few of the show gardens at Chelsea Flower Show. And I never really, for me growing up, it's an old person's thing. It's what my parents did, gardening and stuff. I'd go and chop the logs. So I wasn't really interested in the plants and the digging until recently. Got my own place and stuff, and I want to make the garden look nice. But it's not just a different level; it's a whole different world when you go from going to not your garden centre, but a general garden centre at the edge of a town in a suburb, and buying a few plants and bringing them home and putting them in your little garden, to going to Chelsea Flower Show, where it's just incredible, the creativity, the design, the vision that and every garden will be completely different.
Absolutely.
The garden designers and the suppliers have, and everything that's associated with it. We get involved because we're either making furniture or parts of buildings or something along those lines. But it's like a whole plethora of trades and skills and materials that go into these garden designs that isn't just putting a load of plants in. You've got water artisans, in fact. People like that. People making huge sculptures, furniture, plants everywhere, rewilding, all these kind of things that are going on. And it really is quite a spectacle. It's
an amazing event. It's people at the top of their game in every field possible, really. It brings everyone together. And it's really creative as well, which is brilliant. We exhibit there, so we've had a trade stand, but now we're actually in the big floral marquee, and it's really cool because we're celebrating ourselves as growers. So we had a really good show this year. It was amazing, actually. And because we've also supplied some of the gardens, it's just a really good celebration for the industry. And again, a really good way to network with other people there. And a lot of our customers come and see us. But we were this year, we're kind of celebrating our homegrown. So we call it AP Homegrown, which is, it's all about homegrown plants, but it's also about our apprenticeship scheme. So the idea is that 10 to 15% of our staff at any one point are apprentices. And Chelsea's like the coolest platform to celebrate that. So they get to be involved in growing the plants. They come and build the garden. And then some of them actually, Liv is an example. She's doing a degree apprenticeship in marketing, and she got to help us basically run the show, and she was there every day. So it was a really good platform to learn from as well, which is what it's all about for us.
And on apprenticeships, I know the King is a good advocate for apprenticeship scheme. Obviously, when he was a prince, it was the Prince's Trust. Yeah. Is it called the King's Trust now?
I think it is. Yeah.
Changed
I'm pretty sure it's been moved.
But he's a big advocate for vocational works and stuff. And I know that apprenticeship scheme is something that you are really pushing, which is great. We do the same here on a smaller scale. You know, our kind of employee numbers are probably a tenth of what yours are. But I think probably maybe 20% of our staff are made up either of apprentices or people that we've trained as apprentices. Maybe more than that, actually. Yeah,
I mean, that's what I think the biggest thing for me is trying to promote that. I think if every business did that, we'd be in such a strong position. And yeah, we have a similar thing where our graduates then go in. In fact, James, I mentioned earlier, I met him at the college next door, Brinsbury College, and he jumped out of a lecture I did and said, "Can I do some work experience?" And 8 years later, he's with us still, you know, and he's doing these hugely prestigious gardens that he does clipping work for, and he's worked in the nursery and everything. So you're seeing this lovely transition from being an apprentice all the way through, which is wicked. But yeah, it's really important to us that I spent my 20s running a charity called Streetscape, and it was 18 to 25-year-olds, long-term unemployed, and the idea is that we would introduce them to horticulture. And after a year with us, they had a qualification, and then they'd go into the world of work. So I've kind of been doing this. This has been my big motivation really since I was in my mid-20s all the way up to now. And it's a massive part of what we do. It's probably, for me, it's the most important part of what we do.
Do you feel like there's been a decline in people taking up trades like horticulture in recent years?
So the big problem in our industry is finding young people that want to work in our industry. However, we know how to make people inspired by it. So we personally as a company are not finding it that difficult. The key thing is finding the right people that stick at it, because it's so much work, putting the training and money as well. The investment we as a team put into each individual. With us, they get to work on our estate. So that was all the plants and the maintenance of the plants we use, both for customers to walk around our garden, but also we then propagate from them. They then might go and work in our propagation team, which is where you make the plants and trees. They then might help us sell them. They might collect them up and do the pest and disease controls. So for us, we want apprentices to work at each level, and that investment of time and money is really critical, that you get the right people at the beginning. So I don't think there's a lack of people that could come into the industry. It's just about educating, you know, going to schools, going to colleges, universities, and showing them there's another route. Than, you know, you don't have to go into accountancy and finance or a banker. You know, there are other things out there. So I think that's a big part of it for me. It's just going and meeting people and talking about it. We also love having we like having work experience, taste days. You know, definitely, I don't know about yourself, but, you know, I did lots of stuff before I found horticulture. I worked in so many different industries, a lot of hospitality, and various other roles, sales, marketing. And it took me a long time to work out what I wanted to do. I definitely didn't have this vision that I was going to be running a nursery.
No, I mean, I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up.
Fair enough, yeah, but I think that's probably the best thing, right? And also carrying on learning more, which I'm assuming you do all the time. And that can come from challenges from customers, but also probably just doing stuff outside of work as well. So yeah, it's I don't know. I don't buy into the fact that there's a lack of people. I think it's just a lack of businesses that are willing to go and spend the time to meet individuals and then spend the time in training them.
We find that we get a lot of people apply for jobs, but it's difficult for us because to find apprentices, we can take sort of 1 or 2 a year because we're kind of limited in how many places we can offer.
Yeah.
Because we're a smaller team, it's all in kind of 1 or 2 or 3 workshops.
Yeah.
But we always take 1 or 2 a year. But what we're finding is the local college say if we take 1 apprentice in year 1, one apprentice who's level 2. Both of them will only have 2 or 3 other people in their class maximum.
Wow.
And that is also since joinery has stopped being offered in Eastbourne, Tunbridge Wells, all the way over to Ashford. So it's all been amalgamated in one college, and they're still only getting 2 or 3 people. So my mission over the next couple of years is try and make joinery sexy. And I've been going into schools and stuff, and that's been really good. That's been met with really good response, but very much the same as what you're describing there. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of training, a lot of investment in the individual. And if you don't get the right person to begin with, what we've been finding is actually the by and large, if we get younger people in, they don't stay for a long time. Again, because they don't know what they want to do. The best apprentices that we've got at the moment, one's 45 and another one is in her 50s somewhere. And they're brilliant.
So change of career.
They're completely dedicated. The best apprentices that we found are ones that come in later on, not necessarily later on in life, but certainly from their 20s and above. We've got a couple of apprentices who've come straight out of college who are brilliant, but they almost seem more mature than their years. Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I'd say that's a very common thread that we found as well.
Really?
That's interesting. Yeah, I've not really connected that thought. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, we definitely have individuals that are career changes. Horticulture does attract that. I think also because it's seen as a kind of a lifestyle job. Actually, when you then get into the career, it's hard work. It's long hours. It's physical. You've got to learn a lot. I mean, you never stop learning in our industry. But yeah, I agree with that idea that the young people we have, they probably are older than years. I mean, Olivia is a good example of someone who, she's I think on her 3rd or 4th year now, but she's just got her head screwed on. I mean, I think a degree apprenticeship is an amazing thing. I wish I'd done one actually. The idea that she's going to finish her degree with no debt, having got money from a job, is pretty cool thing to have done. And it took someone quite savvy to, I think, to have done that. So you're right.
So I've not heard of a degree apprenticeship. How does that work?
So we employ Olivia as an example for 5 days a week. 1 day a week she goes to study. So we essentially pay for that day. She works for 4 days.
So it's the same as a normal apprenticeship then? That's what we do with our apprentices.
Same. Sometimes it can be that they do 2 days, depends on the structure. With hers, it's a day. And often in the summer holidays, they then do their revision or exam prep or whatever. They'll come and work with you. So you pay for it, and ultimately hers is a 4-year long qualification. So it's amazing. Yeah, I mean, from her perspective, no debt, as I said, income. She's learning all the skills. She gets to use our work towards her degree as well. So it's brilliant. I mean, it's like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
But you've got to know what you want to do, I think. 4 years is a long commitment still.
But then at the same time, I think that's, in a way, it's less of a commitment to spending 3 years at uni studying something that you might... I'm equally...
I was about to ask you,
equally in the same boat as you there, but you spend 3 years, especially now with the cost of fees and tuition and lodging and everything, you potentially, if you do 3 years doing, I don't know, let's say, I know loads of people that went to university to do geography or psychology. Blokes did geography, women did psychology, and all of them come out, not a single one is using those degrees, but they just wanted to go to uni, and they were courses that they thought would be all right. And they've come out, now you come out with about £50,000 worth of debt.
I would have to really think about that now.
Unless you're from a very affluent family who can pay for all your fees and stuff. If it's just an everyday person, that is a 3-year commitment plus 50 grand debt, whereas actually a 4-year apprenticeship with no debt, you've got a job, you come out, you've still got a degree, which is actually specific, but it'd be just the same, if not better, because you've also done work experience and you proved that you're a good candidate to employ. So hands down, that's got to be the best way for most people.
Yeah, I just think it's amazing. And again, the college I used to go to in Horticulture, I go and talk there, and it's state college, and it is brilliant. They educate students at that stage that there's more than just going to universities. They give them all these options. Because a lot of parents, I'm not quite there yet, but a couple of years above me, they're going to these events and they're not even aware that there's a degree apprenticeship. So it's really important beating that drum really and telling people that giving the younger audience that there's these options.
And is it facilitated by university?
So in this example, the university does operate it. I think she's at Chichester University.
Right.
Finding there's more and more coming online, so you can go on the apprenticeship website and it will show you. But it's finding the right degrees that fit it. And obviously, then you talked earlier about geography. We're in West Sussex, we're near Chichester, so that helps us. But we're not. It's still pretty much in the middle of nowhere. So it's also finding people who are willing to live in our area. That's a big challenge, I think, is geography. Our work is not remote. It has to be done in an office or at the nursery, same as yours.
Same as us, yeah.
So, I think that's probably one of our biggest challenges.
Well, you're probably a bit better off than me because you've actually got a radius around you, whereas we're on the coast. We've only got a semicircle.
180 degree.
Yeah, so we do find it hard to recruit. Our guys come in from as far away as probably Ashford and Eastbourne, and that you wouldn't want to travel more than an hour if you've got it's hard work. But then we've kind of pivoted the other way. We do a 4-day working week here.
Yeah.
Because we start a little bit earlier, we finish a little bit later. But on those 4 days, I say to the guys, look, just come in, give it your all on those 4 days, and then you get 3 days off.
Wow. Okay.
And actually, we're more productive than we were before we started doing that. The days go fast. My God, the days go fast, and they feel like they're getting faster and faster. But the weeks go really fast.
Yeah.
But the output in those 4 days is phenomenal, and everyone's a lot more upbeat, a lot more positive. And I think that 4-day week attracts a lot of people. Particularly, what I'm really lucky with down in the workshop down there, we've got quite a few guys that are a bit older. They're very experienced. They've come from working in a huge range of different joineries and cabinet making places and stuff. And what's really good about that is they can pass on their skills and knowledge to the guys that are a little bit younger. So we've got everything from, trying to think what the youngest apprentice would be now. One's just left who's probably 20, but sort of 21 upwards, from 21 all the way up to 65.
Yeah.
And it's the full range in between. So
I think it's really good in the business to have that age where you've got a sort of community for support as well. We find that's really useful.
It also keeps everyone a little bit humble because the older guys that know what they're doing, they know that they're maybe getting on a little bit. But the younger guys that would normally come in and be, really cocky, I know everything, they know that they don't because they've got older guys there who are showing them, and
really
running
cool.
rings around them sometimes on the machines and stuff. So, but yeah, that's I think how I'm going to try and make at least my trade sexy is by, we're starting things like this podcast, and I'm going to try and take someone on to help with social media. I do a little bit of the telly work, but I can't really promote what we're doing here. So it's a really difficult thing, but I think you've got a really good approach to it, going and doing talks and stuff in places and going meeting people face to face and saying, look, this is what you could do. Yeah,
it's also we're finding that because we've been doing it for quite a few years, and I said through Streetscape and here, it's like we're sort of known to do this. So it feels like sometimes there's also a bit of word of mouth helps a lot. We were very lucky to be featured on TV during Chelsea, and that had a brilliant profile raising for us. Yeah, it was really good. I mean, we're open by appointment, so we have a challenge with that 4-day week thing because we're actually open 6 days a week. So and because our plants are living, we're really open 24 hours a day. Yeah. So it's a really tricky balance that with the team working about how to, because I like the idea of challenging that model, the 4-day week, but I'm not quite sure how we would do that yet.
Split shifts or something like that.
Yeah, it'd have to be. And problem is I've grown the business quite substantially in the last 10 years. It's about 3 times bigger than it was. So the space and the plants we have, they require a lot of work. One thing that's really interesting, you talked about experience then in the workshop, with us, experience comes with, we call it a crop walk. So every day, someone, including me, we walk around the nursery and we're looking for sort of signs, looking up, looking down, seeing what plants are doing well, what aren't. Obviously, we've had very little rain this summer. So it's trying to work, you have to kind of be very visual. And I find that that's a hard thing to teach. That takes years and years of understanding plants to see those kind of issues. So again, that's 7 days a week we need to be doing that, and things can change very, very rapidly. And I think that's what's cool about having the younger generation and then the more experienced horticulturists together, because you sort of see those gaps forming. We find that our younger crew are much more creative. They come up with a lot of fresh ideas, and we try and we call ourselves a site of horticultural excellence. So we're trying to inspire people to change. although we have lots of like stuff that's historic and ways of working, we try and get people to really challenge the way we look at plants, the way we treat plants, maybe the way we clip plants. I tend to find that comes from the younger crew. They've got less preconceived ideas about how things should be done.
Yeah, well, they haven't had years of conditioning to say it needs to be like this, and you get to that end point.
But that's cool, right? Because you've got this mix together. If you remain open as a business, like we really try and keep it a flat structure. In fact, I love being challenged by everyone in the company. That's kind of, for me, that's a successful business when you've got individuals challenging you at every stage, not in a negative way, but in a constructive way, right? Yeah. So around good things, like with maintenance, I love them saying, why don't we do this? What about that style? And isn't this a quicker way of doing that? There's a machine here we could use. I was saying earlier that one of the biggest things that we've done is investing in more machinery recently. So we bought about 5 years ago this post whacker, which helps to get fencing posts in. And it probably sped up our workflow by about 50%, something like that. Also, the guys were hammering these stakes in, and it's terrible for your body. Yeah. But again, that's about being like really adaptable, listening to what others think about. And they suggested this tool to me. We bought them and we've never looked back. Yeah. That's what I mean by it's that kind of really positive, constructive criticisms and helping us to like move forward in a positive way. It's good.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're exactly the same here. The machine that's behind you there, a guy came to us from another joinery who's now working for us. It's amazing. We were using a wide belt sander to do doors, and why haven't you got one? And it hadn't even crossed my mind before. And he said, oh yeah, you just put it through like 2 or 3 times and it's done. And I was thinking, no, that can't be. Normally we'd spend a couple of hours doing that by hand or whatever. And he said, oh yeah, it's that good. And we went up and had a look at it in the showroom, and a guy put a door through, put it through once, flipped it over, put it through again, adjusted the height, came out absolutely perfect.
Amazing.
I was in disbelief. Like, how could a machine do a better job than we could be doing it with a power tool? So anyway, I bought it, never looked back. It's one of those things that you spend I spent a long time going, I don't want to spend that much money on a machine. I think it paid for itself in a month.
Yeah, it's
probably incredible. In the time saved, that guys could get on doing something else because they've spent 30 seconds or a minute sanding that might have taken them an hour before, and it was perfect.
But that's required you to be really open to that, like listening and having that change, right? Because there's a lot of historical companies, I think, that just get stuck in their ways, and it's really important to like listen to people around you and take different opinions.
Well, joinery is a really funny one because you fall into 2 camps in joinery. You've got like the old school guys that are, they're using fixed woodwork machinery. I mean, some of them have been trained to do it by hand still, so they'll be using hand planes, but they'll be using fixed woodworking machinery. But you'll fall into one or 2 camps. Either that you believe that traditional joinery is only done by hand tools and traditional machinery, or the other camp of get it done on a CNC and kind of put it all together. So you're not really a joiner or a machinist. You're just assembling stuff on the bench that's been cut on the CNC. And we kind of, because I haven't been traditionally trained as a joiner, I used to be a school teacher before this. So
I didn't know that.
It was like I've done a bit of both. I've seen the traditional side. I've worked on CNC machines, laser cutters and stuff. And you see, teaching design and technology. I was always teaching about the next step in technology and where it can take us. So I've kind of come at it from that view. So sometimes it's like the CNC machine behind us, the 5-axis. I was kind of thinking we're making loads of these things with these bits of furniture we're doing them by hand. It's taking ages. Is there something that we can do? And did loads of research and found that this machine would do everything we want it to do. Nice. And loads more. The only limit of what that machine can do is probably what we can tell it to do. Like it's us. We're the weakest link.
Yeah, I bet.
But it's things like that where sometimes some of the guys in the workshop say, oh, can we get this? Can we get that? And I think, yeah, cool. Sometimes I think, no, you're just being really lazy there. You can definitely do that yourself. But if it's going to save, it's like, that old saying, will it make the boat go faster? And that's the question I ask myself every time I make any kind of decisions. Is it going to make the boat go faster? Is it going to make it more efficient, better for the guys, a better product, or cheaper? And that's kind of my criteria for almost every single choice is it going to make us better?
Yeah.
And then if I can justify it in my limited criteria, 9 times out of 10 I'll go for it.
Yeah.
And I never look back.
Yeah, I do the same. I think sometimes we can turn to tech or machinery too quickly.
Yeah.
But if I go through a kind of strict, same as you, I'll go and demo it, have a look. I'm finding all the AI stuff pretty insane at the moment because we're using that quite a lot in our design process. Yeah, because so when we design gardens, we use plants. We don't do our landscaping. So what that means is someone's maybe got the planting beds there, and we'll say, look, we can use plants to do the whole thing. And so historically, we go to a customer, we then suggest them a plant list, and then we go and lay it out on site. So it's really visual, but it's done there. So AI has really helped us because sometimes customers want to have a little bit more than just a plant list, and we can almost instantly recreate from our plant list what it will roughly look like.
Wow.
And that's just transformed it for us because we don't have to spend time designing it, as in doing drawings. We don't want to do that anyway. But it just gives them that little bit over the line to help them. So we've really found that amazing. We're also using it a lot for producing our quotes. We've just taken on a new sort of software for our proposals, which we're about to sort of do it this week. So just to sort of make that customer experience really improved. So it's not just on the production side. I think it's also like the customer facing side. There's things you can do to make the team more efficient.
And have you been using it? Because I heard someone else talking about AI and managing plants, and saying about each plant has a sensor on it, and then it feeds back to a central hub, and then the kind of the AI module in there will say, well, that plant's too dry, that plant needs more water, or it needs more food, or the magnesium levels in that plant or whatever it is are a bit too low, nitrates are a bit too low, and then something will come along and feed it, either a tap will open there because it's on a gate valve or whatever, or a little robot will drive up and tip in what it needs and stuff. Are you doing that sort of thing?
So we're quite an obscure nursery really, because we're not. You get a lot of growers, especially in England, where they'll just grow hebes, and there'll be 5 types of hebe, and they'll have 10,000, thousands of them, or a monocrop where they're just growing one type of plant. We have somewhere in the region of about 30,000 sellable plants.
Wow.
And then there's propagation on top.
30,000?
Yes, sellable, yeah. But then there's propagation, which is tens and tens of thousands. But inside that, there's probably about 200 to 300 varieties. So your watering needs, whether to pot it on, sunlight levels, the conditions change massively across that. So we, at the moment, it has to be really manual, and it's that looking around and seeing stuff really critical with us. But yeah, there is technology to do that. In our propagation, we would start using it. But again, because there's so much variety, I'm not sure it's quite right for us at the moment. There's machines that can help you to clip, so they do balls, and you just put it in, and it spins around.
Really?
Yeah. So there's places we can go with it.
Yeah.
I've almost got You mentioned earlier about being a kind of mixed bag between being someone who uses tech and then uses the old-fashioned way. We're definitely on that camp. We use both. Some of the best bits about our nursery is that plants sometimes do their thing and become something, and we haven't put them all into this ball shape. They become something else. So I'm keen to keep that kind of creativity, let the plant tell you what it wants to become, kind of thing. And then another thing is our clipping. So you'll see and hear lots of guys going around using hedge trimmers. They're great if you're trying to just do something very basic, but we're interested in clip work where it's really manual and it's very much a creation. You're creating a piece of work and a piece of art in someone's garden. So there's a balance for it, and we I want to keep some of those skills and those artisan skills that I think we have at the nursery. It's really important to me.
Yeah, it's the same for us. Same for us here. We are utilising technology as best we can to push what we can do a little bit further forward. Yeah. But at the same time, the key to the foundation skills are always going to be the same. You're marking out your hand tools, everything else, just to make sure, if you can't finish your product properly, you can't do it from start to finish by hand. It's cheating if you're just relying on a machine. I
agree, and you don't. It's from a learning perspective, they don't necessarily then know that journey is really important to then be able to be more creative. One of the cool things we've just recently added into the nursery is I waited for a long time to get the right mix, but we've got solar just been fitted on our land, and it was fitted in February. and we waited for the battery technology to improve. And so basically all of our, at the moment, it's over 100% of our energy. So we're putting stuff back into the grid.
Wow.
It comes from the sun, which is cool. And then it allows us, because we have a laboratory at the nursery, so it has lights on 24 hours a day, and all of that is being run by our solar and then batteries at night.
That's great.
Which is really cool. Our lab's really important to us. So it's kind of an insane thing. We're probably never going to make the money back. It's purely an educational space, really. But we can take, it's called the meristem. So we go down to the sort of the beginning growing material of a plant, and we go into our lab. It's a kitchen environment that's completely, everything's completely clean, and you have to wear the right outfit, and just to make sure that everything's sterile. You cut down the material down to a thing called a meristem, and then you work in a flow cabinet, which creates clean air. And we then put that into a growing room, which is controlled temperature, controlled light, 24 hours a day. The reason for doing that is we can grow some really rare plants that you can't find anywhere else. So, it's kind of cool now because it's being run for free by the power of the sun, and it's a wicked place for our apprentices to learn how to grow from the beginning. So I think that's an example where, we're not trying to make money from that. That's just simply about, it's the most amazing learning tool. And you learn from the beginning there.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
It's mega cool, yeah. The idea of it is that something like a banana called Musa Bajou, you can grow them totally virus-free. If you use a plant that's got no virus, then you're multiplying that same mother plant all the way through. And over time, you'll have this lab filled with plants that you just slowly wean out, take them out of the lab, and then you can sell them, and you grow them on. So it can become commercial. It's just a lot of work to get there, and we're still learning.
Could you do stuff like splicing in the lab as well? Because is it a cherry tree? All the cherry trees that we get in England, they're generally a mix of two, aren't they?
Yeah, so grafting is where same sort of thing. So grafting actually seems to be more of like a tradition. It's more used in Europe or with fruit trees, you're right. What you're doing there is you're taking the best bits of a plant. So for instance, you might want to have a good rootstock, i.e. the bit in the ground. You want that to be solid so it can create a good, strong plant. It's not going to get as many pest and disease issues. So that's why you do it. And then on top of that, you grow a variety that you want because it's got lovely fruit, lovely tasting it. With us, we're doing it because we want a plant that's really strong, but at the top bit, we want it to maybe do a job of screening someone's house. So it needs to be a hedge on a rootstock plant that's good at standing up straight. So your grafting is, you do that outside of a lab environment, and you either do a bottom graft or a top graft, depending on what you're trying to do. There's so much in what we're doing about, in horticulture, just to constantly learn. There's loads of different techniques. You see fruit trees sometimes where they've got multiple fruits on the same tree. Yeah. That's from grafting.
How does that work?
So you're just using a solid root structure, root base, and then you graft by taping and leaving it. And once they then form, grafting can fail, but often it doesn't. And as long as you don't get it's just not too damp and the conditions are right, you'll then get it growing off that plant.
And could you graft with I know you can graft with slightly different varieties of the same sort of species, genus and whatever it is, but could you put an apple tree on a cherry stock?
Yeah, so my understanding is there has to be like a common family between them. So as an example, like in our industry, 'cause we don't do fruit trees, but in our industry we use a thing called Elaeagnus. It's a wicked coastal hedging plant. It's bomb-proof. But if you let Elaeagnus abingii, which is the plant that we use, if you let that become a tree, it will just fall over. Really? It's not grown to be a tree, it's a hedge. So it doesn't have very solid roots. So you graft Elaeagnus abingii on Elaeagnus angustifolia. So the Elaeagnus is the common family that it links back to, but you're using a solid base that you can then graft a hedging plant onto. Just like a hedge on stilts.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. My dad's got a cherry tree. It made me think of it actually, and it's a flowering cherry, like a Japanese flowering cherry on top, but it's obviously grafted to a fruit tree stock at the bottom because they don't look very pretty most of the time. The fruiting cherries, and
then you'll get little bits of growth coming from the base.
Exactly, these little sticks, which because it's quite an old tree now, they're actually a couple inches wide now, and you get these this really good display for that week in April, whenever it is that they look really beautiful, and it looks pretty crap the rest of the time. But then later on in the year, you get all these cherries about waist high that is completely different. The flowers look completely different. And it's got these really juicy cherries on it that are just
amazing. Yeah,
around here.
It's called epicormic growth, or we call them water shoots. So in a sort of, we're mainly designing gardens, right, with plants that do something. So they might be clipped into a shape. They might be screening your neighbour. They might be a lovely focal tree at the end of the garden. So we're not trying to grow fruit and stuff like that. We would normally cut those off.
Right.
So we would cut epicormic growth off or water shoots because we don't want the plants to be taken over. But in that example, actually, there's a kind of benefit to doing it. It's quite cool. Yeah, quite like the idea of that.
Like the Frankenstein cherry.
Exactly.
So talk me through your process when a customer comes to you and says, "I want you to design my garden from start to finish." Because you were talking about the customer experience. Like, what is the customer experience? What do you offer them?
Yeah, so we do a huge amount remotely now. So we can be designing someone's garden or just suggesting plants to them through WhatsApp, videos, calls. But the kind of the main part of our customer experience is they'll book to come and see us. We're by appointments. The idea is that we can then like dedicate someone to be with you. If you're ever passing, we don't mind people coming in, but the idea is to give them that lovely experience and time as well. We recommend people bring photos or videos of their garden. And again, it might just be someone wanting to put one tree in a particular place, in a pot, something special. Or it might be they want the whole garden done. And if so, then our design team will either visit them or do a remote call. And from that, we give them a plant list. And I said earlier, we use AI to maybe generate an image for them. And really, it can be very rapid. So later on today, I've got 2 visits. They'll probably get my ideas by this evening.
Wow.
If they really wanted and we had the capacity, we could be planting it next week. So for certain customers who really want things instantly, we can really work very fast. And again, because we have the nursery, we have the plants there, they can come back, see us. We can show them the plants we're suggesting. And then, the guys come in and within a day, the garden can be transformed by us. So it's exciting. It's an exciting thing to do. And unlike hard landscaping, which takes a long, long time, you're reliant on materials coming in, sometimes very heavily delayed, costs going up, as we all know. With us, we're trying to use plants to do the work, really. Could be a job of screening, like I said. Could just be to soften a border. And we're obviously using our architectural plant range. So we love clipping gardens. We love having a bit of colour, bit of flower, but it's mainly about shape and form.
One thing that you had years ago when I visited, when you opened to the public without appointment, and I popped in, you had a really cool little stand that you looked through a window. You looked through what was like a bedroom window, and there was a normal sort of garden, which mine looks very much like, just a square of a shed in the background. And then you look through the same little maquette model window, and then it was the same size garden, but you had all these kind of in what you'd call it complications, but there's just plants everywhere, planting everywhere, rows and stuff, and it was an instant image that gave you a fascinating and really insightful appreciation of what a normal garden, a square 10-meter square garden could be. And I'd always taken it for granted that I've got a small garden, it has to look like that. It's a square, kids can play football in it or whatever. Yeah, that's what it is. But as a visual representation, I looked through this miniature window out of this garden, and it looked incredible. Yeah,
it's really interesting. So we love celebrating makers. So we used a guy called Al Turner, who's an amazing artist. And he still does work in the theatre, and so he creates models of theatres. Yeah. So he helped us to create this model of a before and after of the garden with, like you said, the fence down, the classic garden with the shed at the end. Yeah. And it's right, people just tend to do this, and they put the plants there, bit of grass there and a bit of plants at the back. Yeah. Whereas we're trying to create an interesting space. So you've got these lovely curved borders and beds, and just using plants, you can create these hidden spaces. Still keep your grass, to play a bit of footy in if you want, or whatever you want to do. But you're hiding the shed because it's not necessarily always the nicest, depending on how well it's been made. If you've got your standard shed in there, you might want to hide it. So yeah, we love models. We love showing people. In fact, that was kind of a pre-AI, thing. It's much more beautiful to look at. So yeah, really important that kind of very quickly explaining to someone what we can do, and we would do that in a day. You just completely transform someone's garden. Wow. So it's amazing. It's really and really tangible, really like a creative experience. Often we don't know exactly where each plant's going to go. It's very fluid. It's done on site, and we get a lot of interaction from the customers, using them to go up into their top, upstairs and have a look down, see if they want to move it around. It's really important that.
And do you supply to other garden designers as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So our business is predominantly retail, actually. So we're mainly dealing straight with customers, but we also work within the industry too. So it could be an architect, it could be garden designers, landscape architects. It goes on property developers. So it's a really interesting business model because we get to work with some amazing projects, amazing people, and we do that all over the UK. So we're often heading up to Scotland or down to Cornwall and Devon. We go all over because it's hard to find. Some of our plants are very, very rare. Going back to the lab thing, we're growing plants that no one else has.
Really?
Yeah. So therefore we move around a lot. It's fun though.
And tell me about some of the wildest experiences you've had delivering plants.
Good question. Yeah. So our biggest thing was we got a chap came and he wants to have a garden full of acers, and hundreds of acers. So the problem was that you couldn't get into his garden. There was no access on the side. It was on a steep bank, so crane access was also pretty much impossible. And the only thing we could do really was use a helicopter. So I'd always wanted to do something like this. I love sort of extreme things. So we looked into it. We found a helicopter pilot who was up for it, and we lifted 6 trees in 45 minutes using a helicopter. Cargo net. We had to set the whole thing up ourselves, and he just turned up, met us in a farmer's field, and 45 minutes later, the guys and we had delivered these trees, and you just literally drop them in the hole and plant them, take the net out, and then we whiz it back up to the field to start again. So it's pretty cool. But we also use this robot that has it's like a tank wheel set, but it's a flat platform. And that is the most incredible machine for going up very steep inclines and difficult places. So yeah, we try and use tech and interesting things like that all the time. And I like the challenges, the impossible missions, essentially.
I heard about the helicopter drop,
yeah.
And I was working at a job at 30 St Mary Axe, the Gherkin building in London.
Yeah.
And I built up quite a good relationship with the facilities managers there and the company that was looking after the management and stuff. And they were saying they needed to change a couple of panes of glass at the very top. And the service lift had been designed to fit the biggest panes of glass in and to go all the way up to the top couple of floors, and a clear path all the way to the window so they could change the glass from the inside. Easy.
Yeah.
And then someone had taken the lease over on one of those floors and then built a commercial kitchen all around. I think it was a kitchen, but a load of infrastructure all around the service lift that meant there was no longer said clear path from one point at the service lift to the window.
Yeah.
And they literally couldn't do it without ripping out, I think it was a commercial kitchen, without ripping out the entire kitchen, they wouldn't have been able to do it. And I jokingly said, well, my mate's just dropped off a load of trees in a helicopter. I can see if the helicopter pilot's available if you want. And they were like, oh, that's a stupid idea. Fast forward a couple of months. I turn up, they've closed the entire street. They've got like a flatbed lorry with all these panes of glass on. This helicopter just comes flying in, drops down, suckers on, lifts it up, plonks it in place. I think they replaced like half a dozen panes of glass, same sort of thing, couple of hours, done. Road closed, lorry drives off. I was like, have you pinched that idea? I told you about that, didn't I? They're like, oh yeah, you might have done, but I thought you were laughing at me when you told me. But I think it's a really good way of doing stuff like that.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I mean, it was that's about teamwork. I mean, the guys were brilliant on the team, but I did feel quite nervous on that job because we had to set it all up as well. I bought this cargo net. I went and visited the guys who had it. It was it was all pretty much brand new, but we've never done anything like it. You have to make sure all the weights are correct, all the lifting straps. The risks were high, but I mean that brought the team together in a way that we still talk about it, obviously. And we ended up doing. We've done 2 lifts now, so it's a fun thing to do, and it just challenges your perceptions of what you can achieve in a day as well.
And did that inspire you to get your pilot's license?
Yeah, I'm not really. I have to say I don't know where that came from. I've always wanted to I needed something, I think, to like escape from the challenges of running a company. And I thought, why, let's have a lesson. So I did a little go in a light aircraft down in Goodwood, and I just fell in love with it. It was amazing. I'm quite scared of heights as well, so the first lesson was pretty terrifying. But after that, you just realise there's so much to learn. So I spent 4 years learning and got my licence, and it's a big challenge. It's way more. They don't really tell you on your first lesson how much there is to do. You've got a lot of exams, and you have to have over a certain amount of hours, about 45 hours as well. So it's the best way of escaping from a tough job. If you're into that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and you've got Goodwood on your doorstep.
Yeah, it's really close. We do loads of Goodwood. We're at Goodwood Revival. We exhibit there, so we're always there. And it was just an insane thing to do, really, and a beautiful part of the country to fly over. So you have to do part of the training. You have to do cross country. So you do it with someone initially, and then you do it on your own. So you have to, take off and fly, land somewhere, take off, land somewhere else, and then fly back. So I did Rochester and then Lydd Airport down, near Rye, Dungeness. So it was quite cool because I ended up flying over the garden that I designed when I was a kid. And you do it on your own, so it's an intense experience. But yeah, I've always enjoyed extreme things.
Well, yeah, didn't you row a boat single-handedly across the Atlantic?
Yeah, so it was two of us, me and my mate Andy. When we were 25, we rowed from Western Australia to Mauritius. So
Oh, wow.
I hadn't rowed before.
You hadn't rowed before,
No.
And you went from WA to Mauritius.
was
When you look at it on a map, I mean, Perth is the most remote city in the entire world.
Yeah.
And when you look at it on a map, Perth to Mauritius
It's 4,500 miles. It's a long way, yeah. So I was 23 at the time when I said I wanted to do it. I was really into endurance running, triathlons and stuff like that. In fact, I was working architecture plants at the time, so I'd run in and out to work, very physical outwork. And I was sort of escaping from a career in accountancy, I suppose. And so I signed up to this event 2 years later. It took us, we had to raise over 100 grand. We had to build a boat. I had to learn to row. It was a lot. So doing something like that, it challenges what you can do again in a day. And it blurs the boundaries of like what is possible. So yeah, we set off in April in 2009, and then 102 days later, we broke the 2 world records. We're the first pair to do that crossing. So no one had ever done that as a pair before. And you arrive in Mauritius and you just can't believe what you've done, really. It's a mad achievement. So yeah, I suppose it probably has massively shaped everything I do, really. It's sort of, I've been a strong advocate for like whatever you do each day, you've got to enjoy what you do. I love what I do now. I loved what I did then. I think that kind of event makes you really stick to that.
And what was it like living on a boat for 102 days?
102 days, yeah. So your minimum, we were rowing, we both decided to get into a routine of doing 3 hours on, 3 hours off. But it was actually a race because no one had done it before. It became this year where everyone was trying to attempt it. So about halfway through, the Indian Ocean's really challenging because you have these oscillating currents. So in the Atlantic, if you put a cork in the Canaries, it's likely to get to the Caribbean because of trade winds and the currents. In the Indian Ocean, you have these oscillating currents that are spinning clockwise, anti-clockwise, and they change all the time. So you have to be looking daily at the maps and the heat waves, the heat maps. So it's a very challenging place. You're not going to get there easily, which is why when we got into the boat, we just didn't have a clue how long it would take us. We'd only planned for 80 days, so we only had food for that. So by about halfway, we had to start rationing, and then we started rowing 16 hours a day each. So we would do a bit of overlap together, and that's what ultimately allowed us to win the race. But looking back, it was an insane thing to do, and it's really dangerous as well.
So when you're on your 3 hours off, what are you doing? Because you still sat in the row position, right?
And we had two rowing places set up, although our front one was awful because we wanted to maximise. You talked earlier about making the boat quicker and all these little changes. we made our primary rowing position really powerful and the perfect place, but it meant our bow seat was actually not as strong. It was a nightmare to row in that position, but we didn't really imagine that we were ever going to use it. Double up. In between rowing, you would eat, so you would be cooking for the other partner. We had a machine that made water, so you take the salt water and you put it through reverse osmosis, and the machine gets rid of the salt and makes it drinkable. Use that to cook with as well. It's like sort of posh pot noodles, basically. You eat all the way through. And then in between that, you're just trying to sleep. I mean, you're knackered. We thought it was going to be really hot, and we were completely wrong. We got dragged quite far south.
Oh, really? And down towards Antarctica?
Yeah, we just enough south that it was you noticed it, and the storms were big. And we had one jacket each, which after about maybe 5 days at sea, the zip broke. So, little things like we had it bungee together and just totally amateurs, really. I mean, we were 25 and just did not really realise.
Was it covered over the top, or was it open?
No, you're open, and then you have one end for storage and one to sleep. So the cabin was tiny, and we both were 6'3", and sharing that in a storm was pretty horrible.
Wild.
It tended to get very warm. You had to shut everything up because waves were smashing you. No fancy aircon or anything. So it was pretty amazing. Look, I mean, it's a long time ago now for me. It's sort of 15 years ago, whatever. But it's just you just realise you can survive in pretty difficult conditions. And about 6 weeks before the end, our water maker broke. So in between rowing, we had to pump by hand the water, and it took about 25 to 30 minutes to make a litre of water. So it just became kind of this insane.
So you're either rowing or pumping.
Yeah, you're pumping water to give your mate a drink, and you've probably used about half a litre sweat to make it. So it's.
Were you catching fish as well at the same time? Or?
We attempted it for the first week, and then I turned to just surviving and winning the race became the only. I mean, I have this kind of real tunnel vision when I'm doing tasks, whether it's in business or in something like that, and I just became completely obsessed about getting to the start line for the 2 years. That's all I focused on. Raising that sort of money in 2007, 2009 was really difficult. The market was hard. We didn't have any, private backing from our family, so we had to go and find money. So by the time we had got there, we'd already achieved a lot. And when you're at sea, it's just survive. We were on they're called sea anchors. So you've got your boat and you've got storm coming. You can imagine the worst thing it would be that you roll in the waves. So you use a thing called a power anchor or a sea anchor, and it's like it hangs out the back of the boat, and it's essentially an underwater parachute. So we learned I kind of learned how to do that at sea, and that stops you from going beam on and rolling. There was twice, but one of them was 8 metre swells, and we were under anchor for about 5 days. Brutal. For someone like me who's desperate to do stuff, it was the most punishing thing because I had to just lie down and rest when all I wanted to do was get out and try and make our headway towards Mauritius.
And that's huge for those people that won't be able to visualise what an 8 metre swell is. That is, you're tilting up for a couple of seconds at least, and then up to top, and then you're pointing downwards for a couple of seconds as you're going down. 8 metres is a big hill. It's
very, very, very large, and then you need to get wind over water to create waves. So if it becomes windy as well, then you start getting a bit of wash. One day our power anchor, it was about 2 a.m, and I just heard this snap, and our power anchor cord snapped, which is about £1,000 just gone into the water, which at the time was painful enough, but also it freaked me out because I realised that if we lose another 2, we're out of the race. So I had to go out in this big storm, hanging on for dear life, and the boat started to go beam on. So I had quite a limited time to get it all locked in and boot us back out again. But actually, it was my favourite time. That for me was my best memory of the road. I remember standing there and just flying down these waves, and just nature just hitting you, and it made you realise how absolutely minuscule we are. Really, it was it was a cool experience looking back at it. But yeah, I got it tied on in the end, and it was all okay. And we only lost one, but you start. I watched Jaws too much when I was younger, so I was just thinking about sharks must have taken it or something. But That was weirdly the biggest fear I had was sharks. I mean, it's just so stupid because there's so many other dangers. But we did see sharks, whales, we saw flying fish, and
they're probably the most dangerous things that you'll come across, flying fish.
Yeah, we got smacked in the face by them pretty much every night because you're rowing in the dark on your own. You've got a small little compass light on my left here, and then you use the stars. But as you know, the stars move, or you move, depending on how you look at it. So you have to be very careful. You use, for 3 hours, it can change. The sky can change a lot. So pretty exciting thing to have done, really, but terrifying at the same time.
Do you think you'd do another challenge like that again?
So I would love to do something else again, but I'm so it's obsessive what I'm doing with the business. I've got a daughter as well who's 8. I can't really take on anything else. The flying was quite a lot, and that was enough. So yeah, I think I'll always find something to keep me interested. I'm really interested in balloon flying, so I'd like to. Yeah, so I've done quite a few. I've done just a few at the moment, balloon trips with a friend, and that might be something I'd like to look into next, because that's an amazing adventure. I don't know if you've ever been hot air ballooning, but when you're up there, you really have to let nature take you, and you have to adapt fast. I think that's probably my next thing, if I'm honest. Yeah,
not a mountain climber or anything like that, then.
I'm not good enough at heights. I have tried. I'd like to go to base camp just because I'd like to go and see it. I'd like to do Kilimanjaro, yeah, but I'm not. It's not my strength. I'm too big, I think, to be hanging off a rock. I'll be too scared. So
I kind of fancy it. The older I've been getting, the more I kind of thanks. The more I think, I need to do something like that. I think as men with similar mindset, it's about a legacy, isn't it? So you can sort of say, I've done that. Yeah. I've done that, and your kids are going to be proud of you no matter what, I think. But for me, I'm like, I want to do that so my kids will be proud of me.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're proud of me already, but for some reason, I've just got this thing in my head. I need to do something like that so they can say, my dad climbed Everest, or my dad went to the North Pole, or whatever it is.
I was way before I had it. When I did that, when I did the row, I was way before I had a child. She's only 8 now. But it was I think it was about legacy for me. And I came back and I founded a charity called Streetscape I mentioned earlier. And again, what was the motivation behind that? It was massively about legacy. I wanted to do something that I felt proud of. But I went through a big, massive thing really. When I came back 10 years ago to run Architecture Plants, and almost exactly a year after I came back, I moved into a trustee role of the charity. And I had some other people help run it. And within a year of us leaving, they basically weren't able to raise the funds, and we had to close it. It all closed very smoothly, and we did everything properly. Everyone was paid and everything like that, and we got all the apprentices into employment. But it was a very painful lesson, because I put everything into that for 7 years of my life. My friend and I, James, put everything into this charity, and we had massive success with our young apprentices, and it was just very upsetting to see it collapse.
The same James that you rode with?
And I rode with a guy called Andy, who's a friend from school, and then James was another friend. I tend to surround myself with people that I trust, that I've known for a long time. And James and I, he loved social enterprise, which we were, and charity, so he was the perfect partner to do that with. But closing it was the most painful thing I've ever been through. It was horrendous. Just, your little baby going. And I think it taught me a big sort of lesson about resilience, and also around, I try and do everything very safe with Architecture Plants. Although taking risks is great, I think being aware of how far to push that is really important.
It's the calculation of that risk, I think, which is key.
Yeah, but perhaps when I was in my 20s, my calculator might have been slightly set differently. I think I'm still probably I take significant risk probably compared to other people, but it's been sort of, the balance has been set probably a bit safer actually in terms of running a company. I think there's a massive, certainly from, I don't know if you feel the same, but I'm aware every month I've got over 40 people that are being paid on a payroll that I feel very much I've got to look after. And it sometimes goes beyond money. It's about supporting them in whatever they're doing in their life as well. So I take that pretty seriously, and I don't want to kind of ruin that for them as well. So I think that's as important as a legacy. You know, it's about doing the right thing at the right time.
It's a different kind of legacy. You know, much as Angus can be proud of what he's passed on to you, and what you've taken over from him. You know, he can, with his legacy, can say, yeah, I started architectural plants, but you know, you'll be able to say, look what I've done with it. You know, architectural plants now, Mark II is Guy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's that founder-led business. When I took over, there was 2 owners. There was a guy called Robin and a guy called Angus. Angus was the founder. So it was quite cool because the transition had already happened where there was a slightly smoothing off of it, not just being founder-led. And my whole thing really was about carrying on some of the best bits of it. This is a little thing, but actually really important. We get lorries come in from Europe, and it's quite a big thing. They turn up, curtains off, unloading it, forklifts going, everyone's there, plants flying off. It probably takes 2 or 3 hours of hard graft, and by the end of it, we just would all go back to doing what we did. But back in the day, we were given a bun run, so someone whiz out and go and get a load of food. And it was like a celebration, and it had stopped somewhere along the history of the company. That had just gone away. So when I came back the first day, I was like, "What? Come on, let's get the bun run in." You know, and honestly, the change of the staff just from that one thing was really important. It shows you the impact of these like positive things you can input in a company that actually are relatively cheap, but had a massive impact by being cut out. There was kind of no need for it, right? It was just lost in the process. So I tried to input some of these things back in that were actually amazing things from the history that I loved about the business. So yeah, that was important as well.
Those little things do make all the difference. It makes people feel valued. Something as small as that makes someone feel valued and appreciated, and that is the key driver, I think, for keeping employees enthusiastic about what they do.
I think so, yeah. And it's also kind of recognising that this is a little bit, you're going a bit above and beyond on this one. Thanks, guys. And it brings people together. When we spend a lot of time in Italy buying plants, and I love the way they sit and make time for lunch. I still don't know exactly how to do that in our culture because it's such a shift. But you go there and they sit and we talk, and I know that we're there as a sort of customer essentially, but they actually just what they tend to do that. It's like their culture. So just even that little part of it for me is important. The bun run, you know. We also do another thing. We put when you're in the toilets, I've really done up the toilets to make you feel special at the nursery when you're visiting as a customer. And we have these little architecture plant stickers on the toilet roll that's not being used. And the amount of people that notice that detail, and actually it was something we used to do 20 years ago. Again, lost in the process of time. But those little details are absolutely critical, and I think it sets you apart, especially in a world of online shopping. And you know, we're trying to make a destination, a place that you can come to as a customer and feel really well treated. And you know, we do our best to try and do that all the way across the journey, really.
Excellent. So let's rewind a little bit. Think of yourself as 18-year-old Guy. If you could give one piece of advice to 18-year-old Guy, but also that you'd give willingly to anyone in that position who's maybe wanting to get into horticulture or start a nursery or work at a nursery, what piece of advice would you give? For me, it's really simple. I want to enjoy every single day of my life. So for me, it doesn't mean there's not only hard days, right? But if you love what you do, you will be successful. So I always try and challenge the young people that I meet to make sure that they say no. If it's not right, move on. And if it is something they're really enjoying, don't worry about how much you're being paid. Just stick at it and do what you enjoy, and it will lead to something good at the end. So for me, that's it. You know, it's just try and enjoy every day. I think what's the point otherwise? I don't really understand. Yeah, well, you don't know how many you got, I suppose. So yeah, exactly. You got to make the most out of all. Absolutely, of it. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Guy, thanks very much. Where can people find you? So we've got a website, architectureplants.com. Also, we've got a big Instagram following as well, and we do loads of posts on there. So that's Archiplants. So yeah, and I'm my one's Plant Hunter Guy. So yeah, and obviously if you want to come and visit us, we'd love to look forward to seeing you at the nursery. And the nursery's in Pulborough, West Sussex. Pulborough, West Sussex. It's near the Land Road garage as well, isn't it? Yeah, so we're sort of right bang in between Billingshurst and Pulborough, next to Brinsbury College. So it's pretty easy on the A29. Excellent. Great stuff. Well, Guy, thanks ever so much for coming in. Really interesting chat, very insightful, and hopefully see you again. All right, thanks.